tiniest bit of saturation to sort of push those sounds forward and make it not sound like a, like an Audio-Technica through a Scarlett anymore, or a 57. You know what I'm talking about? I
know exactly what you're talking about.
I have no problem with any of that equipment at all. It's just when you have like 50 tracks of that, it can be really overwhelming, and a lot of the the brightness and the stuff that's going on there can be really harsh and hard to deal with, and a lot of the same over and over and over again. But
it sounds to me like you've also mentioned this before earlier in the podcast, is like saturation is like kind of like one of your things that you kind of just push things. If things need extra push to get them through the mix, add the density, add that kind of color.
Totally.
That's like the move.
I'm kind of a sucker. Like I grew up listening to a lot of classic rock and like the Eagles and James Taylor and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, sure.
And like a lot of those sounds are just so like big and like in your face.
I know.
And they
so
also
rich.
have so much dynamics. And I haven't really figured out a way to do that with like compression and EQ on their own. Like, those are the tools that get used the most, but like a lot of the time I'm choosing compressors because I like the sort of color that it's adding. And like, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but when I say color, I'm pretty sure I'm talking about saturation. Like that's the reality of it, because it's going through the gear, and then harmonics are coming out, and that's saturation right there.
That's timbre, right? Also,
right. Yeah. So like, with that kind of like with this, like I loved getting to work on this EP. And I think that was like one of the things that like, it was my job to work on with that. And, like they're not at all by any means the only ones doing like home recordings. I work on a lot of stuff like that where, there's sort of this step before mixing where you're trying to get the sounds to, like be big and like have some richness and fullness and stuff like that.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the second song in the sauce segment.
Totally.
Which it just because it's getting late here. So you sent me a cover of Karma Police by one of my favorite bands, Radiohead. By the cover by Scary Pockets, which is really really dope. So we'll pull that up for 90 seconds. Have a listen, and we'll talk about it.
Karma police, arrest this man, he talks in maths. The buzz is like a fridge, he's like a detuned radio. Karma police, arrest this girl, her Hitler hairdo. It's making me feel ill, and we just crashed a party. This is what you get. This is what you get. This is what you get when you mess with us. Karma police, I've given all I can. It's not
Awesome. Sounds so good. I love when the bass comes in with the synth bass in the chorus.
Oh yeah.
I just like that gave me the stank face.
Oh yeah.
So
It's so good. That
Yeah.
da-da. Yeah. It's so good.
yeah, props, man.
Thanks.
So tell me a bit about what went into that. You could either you could start from the recording and go through the mixing.
Yeah, so we recorded that at 64 Sound in like Highland Park, and that one was a little bit more like ISO'd. Like I did, it was just like a band recording session. So I had the drummer in the room. I put the vocal in a booth. Everybody else was in the room. We had 2 synths, and then Ryan was playing guitar. I I honestly, I don't remember exactly what I did for overheads on that. Honestly, like with drum sounds, a lot of the times I feel like the overheads end up being like the most important thing while I'm tracking, but then when I'm mixing, it ends up being the close mics. But
Yeah.
for overhead sounds, I generally don't like super wide drums, so I try to do placements that are wide enough. But like I don't love it when there's like a cymbal just in my left ear. It's just not my favorite. I prefer like when it's kind of down the center. So I'm pretty sure I did stereo overheads on that one and just kind of like made sure that it was pretty tight when we were tracking it. But we've got a great desk. And just a really good sounding room and good sounding gear. So I mean that was kind of a lot of capture. Like the synths are all like DI'd and stuff. And so like my goal is to get everything sounding like pristine and beautiful. I've recorded Monica before. And
what a vocalist.
Yeah, she's so good. And I've never been in a situation where it's been like right to record her on like a condenser. So I'm pretty sure that's a U47 that I used on that one. It's a really, really good one. They've Pierre's got a great one over there. And so she just sounded pristine. And then the process for this one was a little bit different because we sent this track to Jeremy Mose, to Emily King.
Yeah, Corey Wong mentioned her on I think one of his podcasts or something.
Oh yeah, she's
so I followed her. She seems amazing. I really should listen to some of her music.
Yeah, definitely. You'll like it. It's great. It's really good stuff. But Jeremy Most, who's her producer, did this track. So he added a lot of the sort of extra stuff that you hear. Like that's him on background vocals. And like he added in a few like sort of subtle synths that like weren't played in the room, and that big old like kick drum as crash cymbal, that big long thing, like he added that, and he gets like he is like one of the best producers I've ever worked with, and he's just world class. He's so good. And so like he sent all the stuff back, and like the vision of what he was trying to do was so clear, and a lot of that mix ended up just being like gentle on the mix end, like just trying, like the performance was great. The production was great. Like as a mixer, this is one of those situations where I like being heavy handed, like wasn't super appropriate. So like just, normal effects, like Jeremy sent me a lot of like the verbs and delays and stuff that were in there. And then I used some of them, and I think I like turned some of them off and did some of my own thing, but really tried to like pay attention to what he was doing and going for in those situations. Yeah. And like, it's always fun, like with really great producers, it's always fun to like see what they do with effects, because it's not always the same thing that I do. Like I don't like think of myself as like being really good at like reverbs and stuff. Like some people are just like super good at that stuff, and I don't know, I always feel like that's a spot when I'm mixing that I end up struggling with for a while before I like find something that I really love.
I've been through that also, where like just like with reverbs, like just being like overwhelming for me, and like sometimes you get a hold of it, and then sometimes you realize like, oh no, I don't have this.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
well, like
it's one of those things. Yeah.
1,000%. And like one of the things that I think I kind of have picked up from like working with Jeremy a few times is he picks really great sounding like effects and then doesn't send like everything to them. Like a lot of times what I'm using effects for is like more like glue to kind of get everything to sit together. So, like I'll maybe use like a really low level of stuff. But like Jeremy will leave stuff bone dry and then have other stuff like pretty wet. But the effect is that like the whole mix seems wetter. And that's something that I knew you should do like as a mixer in my head. But like it's really changed changed the way that I think about effects and stuff, because I can really pick parts. And then what that lets you do is it lets you turn those verbs up because you've been selective about what's going to them.
Right.
There's not any like the sort of mushiness that can happen when you have too much stuff going to a verb.
Using it as an effect as opposed to just ambience.
Right. Totally.
So that was his reverb, like when the guitar, does their crash with the snare drum. That was like one of those verbs that he came up with.
Man, that particular one. Dude, we might have recorded that one. I think
like in a chamber?
That might have been is that what I'd have to go back and check it out. should have done my homework a little bit more on this.
No, it's all good. There's no homework in this show. It's just a chat.
I'm not 1,000% sure what reverb that is. It was either I might have done that one. It's a chamber that's on there?
Oh, I have no idea, but it's when everything hits, it's just like doom, gah,
Oh, right. Oh, in the verses.
Yeah.
Verses. Okay, got it. I was thinking about the chorus. I was like, where is that? Where's that hit? Yeah, I'm not 100% sure like what I used there. Like my go-tos, if I was going to do something like that, it would be probably either like an EMT 140, like a plate style thing, or just like pull up Valhalla Vintage Verb and like tweak it until I like something. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Both are very respectable methods.
Yep, totally.
It's so interesting that there's another producer on the track, because it's not exactly producing. It's kind of like remixing or like pre-mixing.
Yeah.
I don't even know, because you say like a remixer takes the production, like takes like the stems of a production and kind of just makes it a new production that that person would like. So it's like, let's take the live tracks, add some extra elements, and turn it into this new thing. It's like it's a super interesting approach.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Like I've really enjoyed like the tracks that we've done that with, because there's just a lot more latitude of what you can do musically. Like I love stuff that was recorded with like 5 instruments. Like I love live music and all that stuff. But like, unless you're a wizard with your feet, like you can only change sound so many times per song. And like, like unless you have like another, like we could have probably like set up another bass drum and gotten a similar like boomy long sound. Actually, you know what? On that session, I think that bass drum was something that I recorded, that kick, that one. So what I did, Brian Green was kind of producing like the day of session, just get another perspective on sounds and stuff. And he had me, he was like, we should do this thing where you set up a kick drum in front of a kick drum. That I've seen stuff happen before, but I like that sound. And I've used it, but I'd never really thought to do that in like a funky song setting, because it's kind of long, and normally I think of kicks as being like really tight. But what J-Mos did is he like used that and then muted it. Like, so he just used it at key points and like had that come in and be like this big bass thing, And that's sort of like instead of having that sound go the whole time, because you would probably turn it off because you don't need that big long kick sound the whole time.
Totally.
Like having somebody go in there and kind of just do some selective muting and stuff like that is super, super valuable.
Yeah.
Another thing that like I try to do with Scary Pocket stuff, this is kind of a more of a general thing, is because the instrumentation is the same throughout the song, I actually like I'll duplicate tracks and make a pretty different sound from section to section sometimes. Like a lot of the times I try to do it so it's not noticeable. So you're not like, oh man, that's not a whirly anymore. But like sometimes it's like pretty big, like, just little changes, just adding some more grit or drive in a chorus and stuff like that can really be helpful.
That's neat.
Going back to this track, what's really fun is that like it got filtered through like multiple people, and like I think that the final product is like totally different, and also better than like what like I would have just done, because he didn't, like, most of the stuff that you hear in that song is what was played. Like there wasn't a whole lot of like muting that happened. It was just like some additive stuff that really like took it over the top. Like he added those background vocals in the chorus. My gosh, they're so good.
Wow, it's amazing. Yeah. I love it. I love the collaboration. I think it's like something super important. And like, I talk about this a lot on the podcast, is how we kind of like all, go into our man and woman caves all the time and kind of just like think it's just us doing the work. And like, if you actually go out a little bit, obviously it's hard in Corona, but even just like, via email and, Dropbox or whatever, collaborate with other people, it's usually better than the sum of its parts. You know what I mean? That kind of synergy, the word people like to use
totally
in the corporate world, but it's a real thing.
I always look for friends that I can send like rough mixes to, because sometimes they have great input about like, okay, you should take this direction, like, especially if I'm struggling, I'm always looking for those people.
Yeah. I totally resonate with that, and try to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't do it enough.
Yeah, me
sometimes I'm just bouncing it off the producer. Like, what do you think? Like I'll send mixes when then they're on the way, not when they're done, just to kind of get a vibe if this is the right direction. Like, I don't know if you do any of that.
Yeah, it kind